Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for ISEP's pre-departure orientation for our programs in France. So to start off, we're going to introduce ourselves. My name is Gretchen McCarthy, and I'm the Student Services Officer for France at ISEP Global. I studied abroad with ISEP in France at Université de Lille in 2015, and since then I have furthered my studies in French by doing a master's at the University of Wisconsin at Madison. And I will let my co-presenter introduce herself.
Hello, bonjour. So I am Gretchen Pescadis, and I am a dual national. I'm American and French. I've lived in France for half of my life, and I am the ISEP host coordinator at the Université Savoie-Mont Blanc, but that's just one of my many hats. I am also in charge of other international exchange programs, and I'm a faculty member at the Université Savoie-Mont Blanc Business School.
Great, thank you. Okay, so in today's presentation, we're going to cover a few different topics related to your program in France. We'll go over culture and daily life, academic matters, health and safety, before you go, and then some information on how you can keep in touch with ISEP as well as your friends and family.
Life in France. So in the next few slides, we'll be talking about life in France and giving you a good head start to your program here. Keep in mind that France is a very large country, and daily life and culture can vary depending on the region. Please do your own research about your host country and the region, as well as the town that you'll be staying in. Our goal with this pre-departure orientation is to give you French is not always needed to study in France. You do not need to always have any previous study of French, but it can be difficult to navigate daily life in France with little to no French. ISEP strongly encourages you to start your language learning using apps like Duolingo before you go on the program. And it's important to think about when you speak French to use formal French when talking to professors and people older than you, and the more informal form. Another cultural point that's specific to France are strikes, or grève, as we call them in French. And they're quite common, and the right to strike is So in France, striking is part of the process. And if there are student strikes at your host campus, don't worry. Your host coordinators will provide guidance on next steps and make sure that you're able to complete your academic obligations. So a bit about daily life. A lot of businesses are closed on Sunday. And during the week, some shops are closed for a few hours in the afternoon, shops and restaurants. Many places are locally owned and have some kind of break. So the best time to go to shops is in the morning or the late afternoon. As I said, some do close for lunch. It's less common than in the past, but some do. And be prepared to know how to pay and use public transportation while you're in France. And if you're using city transportation, you should buy your ticket in advance or purchase a card that you can reload. And you might swipe your bus card or ticket. One thing that's important is just to be aware of your surroundings and observe and follow what other people do. So a little bit about parties. House parties do exist, but usually students go out to bars and restaurants to socialize. We talked about public transportation for a good reason. It's because it's usually pretty easy. It's inexpensive. Students usually get some kind of discounts, and buses can be more cost efficient than trains. As for punctuality, it's important to be punctual. So a little bit about interpersonal relationships. So we really encourage you to consider differences in cultural expectations. Greetings may be different. So when greeting people, French people either shake hands or kiss on both cheeks, but they don't actually kiss. They touch cheeks, but the lips do not touch the cheeks. And if you're unsure whether to shake hands or faire la bise, which means to give a kiss, just wait and see what is initiated by the other person and follow from there. So the level of customer service in France may be different from what you're used to experiencing in your home country. And yeah, so you might not expect the same customer service that you have in the US, for example. And asking for help. So there are many things that you're going to perceive as new and unfamiliar, and these things are going to be normal to French people. So if you need any assistance or have any questions while in France, you must ask. About housing, you can ask your host coordinator where you can access Wi-Fi on campus. Also, the Wi-Fi in your student residence may not be stable depending on where you are. So housing, typical university student residence includes a single room with a bathroom. It's furnished and there's a shared kitchen. And there's often no wireless internet, so you may need an Ethernet cable. Residences in France are not usually air conditioned. Linens are not usually provided. In France, Crous sometimes offers a bedding package, and sometimes that can be for a fee of about 30 euros a semester. Regarding meals, tipping is not normally necessary in Europe. You can, though, leave a small tip, €1 or 2, if you feel that you had good service. This will be well appreciated by the waitstaff. Because, so you don't need to tip like you do in the US because hotels, bars, restaurants, and even some taxis are legally required to include a 15% service charge in bills. But these staff are often low paid, so they do appreciate a tip a small tip if you feel like you've gotten good service. As far as cooking and meal planning goes, it's common for people to grocery shop every few days rather than buy in bulk for a week. To local markets, because that's a great way to experience French culture. And also, if you go just before they close, you can get some really good deals. And you can cook because you'll have access to your own cooking facilities. You may need to provide some of your own cooking utilities. And in France, most dietary accommodations can be met, but they are met with different amounts of enthusiasm. So just stay aware of that. And if you have very strict dietary needs, then make sure you're very clear about that from the beginning before you eat anywhere. Yeah, and eating is just great in France, so enjoy. French food, what are some of the things that you get to look forward to? You get to look forward to pot-au-feu, which is a kind of pot roast. You get to look forward to pâtisserie et boulangerie, which are pastry shops and bakeries. You get to look forward to baguettes and much, much, much more. So note that food in France is very regional, and locals are proud of their regional specialties. I see here that pot-au-feu is the national dish of France. Actually, I've heard that it's really couscous. because French people love couscous, but pot-au-feu is the more French option. So other popular dishes include coq au vin, cassoulet, salmon, for example, en papillote, which means wrapped up and steamed in a little like cooking paper, and boeuf bourguignon, and so much more. Using technology when you're abroad. So make sure you check about your phone plan, check with your provider about international plans, and you may want to consider purchasing a SIM card and a local plan. Definitely inquire with your provider to understand roaming costs because they can be expensive. A lot of students, when they do purchase a SIM, will join and then use mostly WhatsApp, but just check to make sure if your phone is unlocked so that you can use a different SIM card. Or you may even choose to purchase an inexpensive phone to make calls with only. Regarding internet and data, check with your housing office about internet availability. That information should be available to you before or when you move in. You may have a restricted amount of data, or you may need an Ethernet cable, but it's fairly common to find Wi-Fi spots throughout populated cities. Finances in France. So the currency is the euro, and if your host distributes a stipend to you, you'll probably need to open a local bank account. And don't worry about that. Your host coordinator or buddy will help you to open your bank account. Some universities even set up a field trip with all international students, so they go set up bank accounts at the same time. Opening the account can be a lengthy process, so you'll need to follow all instructions given by your host coordinator and open your account as soon as you're given instructions. And it's a good idea to carry some cash, as not every restaurant or shop will accept a card, although most places do accept cards and contactless payment today. So it can take a few weeks for stipends to be dispersed after your account is set up. So please come prepared with funds for the first several weeks to the first month of your program. And if possible, we recommend that you have a small amount of the local currency before you arrive or once you arrive at the airport.
Great, thank you, Gretchen. I'll continue with the rest of the information about daily life in France. So we did want to also mention a few points about sports and leisure in France. The French are really proud of their Paris Saint-Germain football or soccer team. Other popular sports in France are cycling, swimming, skiing, and tennis. Sometimes your host university will have discounted university sports services that you can use, but they might not be included in your ISEP fees. So please check with your host ISEP coordinator to see if these are included or not and what sports activities or options are available to you. We also recommend taking advantage of the events and trips that are organized by your international office. Also, the Erasmus Student Network is like a huge network of study abroad students studying across Europe, and they often host gatherings and events on or off campus, and sometimes like short weekend trips that you can definitely participate in as well. Okay, so major holidays and vacation periods in France. Obviously, there are more than this, but these are just a few that we wanted to mention. So l'Épiphanie is on January 6th. Carnival is in February. The date can change. Labor Day is May 1st, as it is in most other countries around the world. La Fête de la Musique is on June 21st. This is a day when there are music festivals all over France. And people are encouraged to go outside, even if it's just like outside of their home, and play music and enjoy the summer weather. Bastille Day is on July 14th. This is like comparable to 4th of July in the US. All Saints Day is November 1st, and pretty much all of December you can find and visit Christmas markets around the country. Please note that during vacation periods, your host coordinators might not be super responsive or responsive at all to emails, as they will be out of the office and enjoying their time off.
Well, you forgot my favorite holiday.
Oh, which one?
So it's Le Chandeleur. It's February 2nd. And no, it's not Groundhog Day. It's a day where everyone in France eats crêpes.
Ah, awesome. I didn't know about that one, but now you all know.
It's a good
Okay.
one.
Yeah, that's a good one. So if you're in France for the spring semester, I think, then you'll be able to enjoy that holiday as well. Awesome. Okay, so we're not going to go over each of these points, but these are just some things that you may not know about France. So Europe's highest mountain is Mont Blanc, and it's located in the French Alps, actually pretty close to one of our member universities, USMB, where Gretchen is the host ISEP coordinator. The Louvre in Paris is the most visited art museum in the world. Many of you could probably have guessed that. And this is probably important. No one wears sweatpants or pajamas outside of their room. So if you are a U.S. college student who is used to, rolling out of bed and going to class in your sweatpants or pajamas, or I think we say athleisure, perhaps try new things when in France, and put more effort maybe into your wardrobe when going to class. Okay, so culture shock, a lot of you have probably heard about. This is something that it's important to talk about because everyone who studies abroad or spends time abroad will experience culture shock in one way or another, or in one form or another. So in this picture of the iceberg, you'll see there are a lot of words that are above the surface on the surface of the water, where you can see, the visible part of the iceberg, but then there's also a lot of things that are below the surface of the water, things that you can't see as well, and we would say those are more invisible things that are tied to culture shock. So it's a good idea to just kind of get a better understanding, do some culture shock research before you go abroad, and not just thinking about the changes in dress, food, behavior, language, etiquette, religion, but also things that you might not be able to see, but you will definitely still experience, such as customs, attitudes, values, beliefs, and assumptions. So as you go through your time abroad, you may experience some high and low points, as you can see in the graph on the right-hand side. Usually the first few weeks of your program or your time abroad are referred to as the honeymoon phase. This is when, you're so excited about everything, you want to soak everything in. You might do some touristy things, try new foods, meet new people, and you'll definitely be charmed by your host destination, host university, host country. But as you go through your study abroad experience or time in France, you'll see that your maybe impressions of the local culture or country kind of come and go, wane and change throughout time. And I just encourage you to review the culture shock handout that you will receive from ISEP, just so you know what to expect, what to look out for at different points throughout your ISEP program. And one thing to keep in mind is that you might experience reverse culture shock when you return to your home country. And some students say that this can be more difficult to deal with or more shocking than the actual culture shock that they face abroad. So I would recommend looking into that as well. Okay, we're not going to read these different reflections from past ISEP students, but when you receive a copy of this presentation, we encourage you to read them and find out what ISEP students thought of their time abroad.
So we're going to talk about academics now. So in France, you should expect to receive less guidance than in some other countries, especially the US. Teaching and grading styles are very different. Individualized learning is emphasized. There's often quite a large amount of outside reading, and students study hard for the exams. You might be surprised that there are not as many assignments every week as you are used to. So many courses actually have an important final exam, which will determine a large portion of your grade. There may also be fewer student services than you may be used to. And it's important to understand that local students enroll in a set program of study. So this is why it may not be possible for you to choose courses that are outside of a particular set or a limited amount because of this. So French students follow a highly structured curriculum, and it's very specific to their degree. The idea of a liberal arts or general education really doesn't exist here in France. And at the end of each year, French students must pass a set of required exams before they can move on to the next year. A little bit about campus culture. So first thing is, do not be afraid to ask for help. When I welcome that somebody just, pinches you just lightly once, and it's a little bit annoying, but you can deal with it. But imagine that that person keeps pinching you every day and then multiple times a day. And that's what happens when you have a problem and you don't talk about it. It's just going to get worse and worse. So please don't be afraid to ask for help. Use the buddy system if your university offers that, and take opportunities to make friends. Especially when your language abilities are not expert, then a great way to make friends can be sports, which can be done on or off campus, any kinds of extracurricular organizations, and of course campus cultural events like theater and music performances, and also using the Erasmus Plus student network, because you'll find lots of other international students from European countries in that network. So a bit more about academics. Full-time students usually take 30 ECTS per semester, and transcript by versions. Please contact your home university coordinator to understand what your home university's minimum full-time requirements are. Because if you need 12 American credits, then you could take 24 ECTS, for example. So the number of classes you take each semester will depend on the number of credits granted for the course. And you'll probably be taking a higher number of individual classes than you're used to at home, but it shouldn't have too much more work overall. Just to give you an idea of how this might work, there are lots of classes in French that are worth 2 ECTS or European credits. Some are worth more. So you could have a 30 ECTS or a full semester by taking 4 courses with 2 ECTS, 2 courses with 6, and 1 course for 10. So if you take a class that has less ECTS, that means normally that you have less work than a course which is worth more. So it will match a full-time course load, more or less. Attendance, yes, you must attend all your courses and save all course materials. And there are different kinds of programs that you can enroll in. One is an integrated course with local students. You also have international programs with local and foreign students, and then there are language and culture programs. So the structure of academics, French university courses are usually of 2 types. So the lectures are called CM, which stands for cours magistraux, and these are located in large halls, usually with anywhere from about 100 to 1,000 students. The professor presents the subject, and there's not a lot of student participation. The other main type of course is a travaux dirigés, or TD, and it consists of smaller groups of students, and students apply and deepen what the professor presented in the lecture. and attendance is mandatory. As an exchange student, you have greater flexibility in choosing courses than the French do, but there's also sometimes an issue of timetable clashes. So you have more flexibility, but not complete flexibility. Language and culture programs. So these are much smaller classes alongside other international students, and there is a high level of student participation. Course names and titles. So you may not find detailed syllabi or course descriptions. This is just a French phenomena where we do not have the same type of course descriptions and syllabi that you have in the US, for example. And what you can expect to see is course names and the number of credits attributed to that course on the university website. There may be multiple modules of a course within a particular unit, and these units of study are called unités d'enseignement, or UE, or UE. So if you register for a unit of study or an UE, then you need to take all of the modules. A bit more about academics and grading. So French students normally work to pass a course. They don't expect to get the highest grade. French grades technically go from 0 to 20, but it's extremely rare to get a 20 or even a 19 or an 18. Many French professors will give a 14 or a 15 as their highest grade. And grades of 9 or 10 are sufficient. So French students need an average of 10 to pass the year, and grading varies greatly from subject to subject. ISEP students in regular university courses can often pass with an 8 out of 20 or a 9 out of 20. And keep in mind that 14 or 15 are considered high scores. So don't expect to get 20 or 19 or 18 or even 17. Be very, very happy with, I mean, anything above a 12 really is something to be happy about. Yes, and final exams, they're different departments or faculté, and they have different start and end dates. So make sure to consult each department calendar to know when courses begin and end. And for students in language and culture programs, grades are a bit more flexible because these programs are very used to international students, and so they may not be as harsh as professors for regular French courses. Regarding registration, that may take place upon your arrival or through an internal application. So make sure to check your email frequently to make sure that you are completing all internal processes. These would include registration for your host university. Courses may be adjusted upon your arrival. So keep an open mind and keep your options open. This is normal. French calendars sometimes don't come out until late. You may have timetable clashes where you have to change something. You may have a class that doesn't have sufficient enrollment. It might be canceled. The professor may be on leave. There are things that can happen. So try and be flexible. If you're taking courses in French, please keep in mind the difficulty of the level of courses. For example, biology in French might be more difficult than a history course in French. So it's just something to think about, and use your host coordinators and your international offices to choose the classes which are going to be most accessible for you. And definitely submit all required forms to your host coordinator. A little more about academics, interaction with professors. So it's a great idea to introduce yourself to your professors during the first week of classes and explain that you are an international student. If there are office hours, go ahead and use them. And if there are not, just see the professor before or after class and make an appointment. So It's important to address academic expectations with your professors at the beginning of the semester, and even during the semester, just so that you avoid confusion on assignments and exam later on. So it's a great idea to proactively reach out to professors and to classmates if you have any questions or need any extra help. You can also write to your ISEP coordinator or academic advisor for general questions, or if you're having trouble contacting a professor. And good tip, if you make any special arrangements with your professors, it's a good idea to get them in writing. So via email, for example, just so that you have something to look back on if any reminders are needed.
Great, thank you, Gretchen. Okay, so now we're going to go over some health and safety information that's important for your ISEP program. Okay, so please review the critical health and safety resources that are available either by emails that ISEP has sent you or will send you or on our website. So please review the full health and safety presentation. This will be sent to you by email. Review resources such as personal safety while abroad. Make sure that you follow any guidance from your peers as well as your host ISEP coordinator on how to keep yourself safe in your destination. Make sure you review your insurance coverage and look into the on-campus resources in terms of health and safety that are available to you. We have here the 24/7 ISEP emergency number. I recommend putting this in your phone right now so that if you do have an emergency and you need to call this, you know it's already in your phone. You don't have to look it up at that time. Also, I recommend putting the European Emergency Services number and the French Emergency Medical Services numbers in your phone as well. It's better that those are there, you know, in case of emergency, but then if you are actually in an emergency, you won't have to spend time looking for those. Some other information that we're going to talk about in terms of things to know before you go. For packing, of course, your apparel needs will vary depending on your host city, you know, what the weather might be like, what the culture is like, but also your personal preferences. So if you're going to be studying abroad in Normandy, you know, do you have the appropriate outdoor attire? If you will be studying abroad at USMB and you plan to ski, do you have the appropriate ski wear for that? And also just for any trips that you plan to take during your time abroad, do you have the appropriate attire or will you get that once you arrive? In terms of toiletries, if you have specific brands or products that you like to use, maybe certain types of shampoo or conditioner or lotion, for example, it's better if you're very particular about those to bring them with you. Otherwise, you know, you might be limited to what you can find at your host university's location or online in France. In terms of medication, if you take prescription medication, then you are encouraged to bring enough for the entire time that you will be abroad. Also, make sure that you bring the actual physical prescription with the chemical makeup and generic name written down, just in case, you know, you get questioned about that at immigration or if you need to refill the prescription while you're out of the country. Also, for any medication, make sure that you put it in your carry-on luggage and not your checked bag. In terms of other information that you may need to know or things that you may need to bring with you for your program, please refer to your pre-departure information section of your ISEP portal or your ISEP dashboard. It will say there if you need to bring sheets and towels for your ISEP program. It's definitely better to know this in advance than arriving and figuring out, you know, there's no bedding or no towels or anything upon your arrival. Other important things to do before you go. So if you're an ISEP Direct student, make sure that you pay the program fee at least 30 days before the start date of your program. As we mentioned before, make sure that you check your phone plan and create a plan for how you're going to use your phone or contact people while you're abroad. You know, make sure that your phone is unlocked if you want to get a local SIM card. Make sure you know the date and location of your on-site orientation, and definitely write down the address of where you're going and put it in your carry-on for when you're arriving in France. We also recommend writing down your host coordinator's email address and phone number, just so that you have it in case anything goes wrong or your arrival is delayed. And then make physical copies of all your important documents and keep them in different locations. For example, you can put the originals in your carry-on, extras in your checked bag, and then also have electronic copies that you can upload to some online storage systems such as Google Drive. Okay, how can you keep in touch with ISEP? So before you leave, you should create a plan for how you'll keep in touch with your family and friends back home. In this presentation, you'll find a link to read tips for staying in touch. Also, once you arrive on program, please make sure to provide your contact information in the tab titled Provide Your Contact Information in your ISEP dashboard. And then, of course, when you arrive in France, make sure that you contact your family so that they know that you've made it there safely. And finally, we encourage you to connect with other ISEP students and share your story. So you can join our Facebook group, you can become a digital ambassador. You can also use hashtag ISEP Study Abroad to share photos and updates both on Instagram and on Twitter. Thank you everyone for watching our presentation today. We hope you enjoy your time in France. Thank you. Bye.
Merci, au revoir.